Hello, good morning. Welcome to my kitchen. Welcome to my home. And as usual, I have my babies. And they need their treat before Mama can get started. They're kind of rocking my camera a little bit, so let me get them their treat. And we'll get started. So, happy Thursday. How is everyone today? So today I'm going to do part 2 of my canning video that I started yesterday, which was a live stream. And when you're canning, especially pressure canning, it's a very long process. So I did part 1 yesterday, and today I'm going to pick up on where I ended yesterday. And when I ended yesterday, I had put everything into the canner. Now, I'm using the Nesco Smart Electric Canner. And this was a gift from my husband. It's my birthday gift, so it's new to me. So I'm just getting used to it. And I thought I would bring you along and show you how convenient it is to use the electric Nesco Smart Canner. It's excellent if you just have a small family, which I just have my husband and myself, and it makes 5 pints or 4 quarts. So it's not a very large canner. And I did show you yesterday the Nesco canner that we were using on the live stream yesterday. And it's not a really big canner, pressure canner. However, it is very convenient. It does most of the work for you. And yes, I do have the stovetop Presto pressure canner. And then I also have a water bath canner. So there's different types of canners that you'll need if you're doing your home preserving. And just one second here. And then yesterday in my live stream, I talked about doing home canning and preserving and how to do it in a very safe manner, so you know that you're not going to make yourself sick, you're not going to make your family members sick. And whenever I did my live stream yesterday, I explained the process that I go through and how I can my pork. So I did have some references yesterday. So if you are preserving your own meats and vegetables and fruits and making your own jellies and jams, please follow the USDA guidelines and purchase yourself some books. I like the Ball books. Everything has been tested and approved. And so I have showed these yesterday. This is the one hardback that I have for home preserving. And then Ball puts out more books quite often. So here's a couple more paperbacks that I picked up. And this is another Ball. And this is a Guide to Preserving. And another Ball Blue book for a Guide to Preserving. So these are not very expensive. You can normally find any of the Ball canning and preserving books online at Amazon, eBay, and sometimes you can even pick them up at like Walmart or bookstore, used bookstore. So always follow the Ball recommended canning and preserving. And then this book is, I think, an absolute must. And it's the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the complete book to home canning. I referenced these quite often yesterday in my live stream. And this is the book that I was using my electric canner. So today I'm going to take off where we left off yesterday. I went through all of the steps of your elevation. Is very important because when you're pressure canning, you have to know what elevation you're in. And whenever you get your book, and this is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the complete book of home canning. It has, like I was canning meat, so I had to find meat, and then it has your tables for your elevation. So mine was this table. I explained that yesterday in my live stream. And I canned pints yesterday, so for pints, my pressure time was 45 minutes using the electric canner. And if I had quarts, it would be 90 minutes. So, because I am 1,000 or below in my elevation. So this will tell you what pressure gauge that you need. And I explained yesterday that the electric canner has 2 pressure gauges. I'll bring you a little bit closer here and show you. The pressure gauge on mine is black because I am 1,000 feet or under. This also comes with a green one, and the green one is for over 1,000 feet. You just pull this off and switch it to your elevation. And this is the canner that we used yesterday, and it's the Nesco Smart Canner, and it does hold 5 wide mouth pints or regular mouth pints or 4 quarts. So I went through all of that yesterday in my live stream. So if you want to go back and see the whole process that I used, that would be part 1 yesterday. Canning pork butt, I think is what I had on there. So today I'm taking off where I ended yesterday. Yesterday I had my canner set up over here, and because of it being a live stream and the time that it was taking to finish, we got to where I was counting down to like 47 minutes on my pressure canner, my electric pressure canner, to complete. So today, the next morning, I'm showing you the finished product, and this is the pork, and you're going to see the fat cap. And the reason I have a lot of the fat cap is because I used a pork shoulder butt, and it has more fat in it. I did remove, if you watched my video yesterday, I removed a lot of the fat, but I wanted a pork shoulder, the pork butt, because pork tends to be dry. If you use like a pork loin, it doesn't have a lot of fat in it. And whenever you're preparing your meals, it's a little more dry. So the pork butt has more fat, and your meat is overall more juicy. Now, some of my jars don't have as much of the fat cap, and as you can see, I've washed them, dried them, and I've taken off the rings, and I discussed that yesterday. Whenever you're putting away your product, this is set for almost 24 hours. I checked to make sure it was sealed. I took off my ring. I washed my jar with warm soapy water and rinsed it and dried it. So now I'll be able to label it and date it. But whenever I put this in my pantry, I do not want to put this ring back on this jar, and I discussed that yesterday. If you put your ring back on your jar and put it in the pantry, it can give you what's called a false seal. It may look like it's sealed, but it's not. If you're just putting it in with nothing but the lid, you can go in and check your pantry, which I do that like maybe once a month or every couple months, because I have a small family, just my husband and myself. You can kind of go in and just lift your jar with the lid. And that way you know you don't have a false seal. It is sealed and it is good and it's in your pantry. So I'm going to use 2 of my jars. I did 5 pints yesterday. So here's my 5 pints. Now, I want to use 2 of these. I'm going to prepare some meals. Once you have made the product and you've safely followed your guidelines, your USDA guidelines, you've properly pressure canned your meat, and you've got it in on your pantry shelf, what do you do with the product? How do you use it? So today I'm going to prepare two meals using the pork, the canned pork. So I did go ahead, you see I have rings on 2 of my jars. These 2 jars I'm going to go ahead and open, but before I do, I went ahead and unsealed them. I want you to hear the difference. This has been almost 24 hours, so I'll bring you a little closer. Now here's what sound you're looking for. That means it's sealed when you're checking it within 24 hours. This, hear that hollow? That means it's not sealed. And the reason it's not is because I did go ahead and open my lids and pop the seals, just so you could hear that difference. So this is giving you more information on your storage and your use. So when you're going in to check your pantry and you're tapping your lids, you're going to hear that sound like a ping. If you hear this, that's hollow. That means your seal is most likely broken. So you'll need to take that pint or quart or whatever you've got stored in it and discard whatever product you have in there and wash and clean your jar. It's just a way to help keep you safe and keep your family safe. So I thought I would share that little part of it with you. If you're new to canning, you wouldn't know that. And then I always, when I check my pantry, I'll lift my jars just with the lid. And if I can lift my jar with the lid and I'm not hearing that hollow sound, I know that my jars are good in my pantry. But if I go to lift it and my lid is loose, which it's going to be on this, most likely. But I'm hearing that hollow. That means this jar has unsealed in my pantry and it's not safe for me to eat or to serve to my family. So the reason I opened 2 of these, even though all 5 sealed, because I did follow all of the directions with the canning process using the USDA directions, approved method. And I did use the electric canner, the Nesco smart canner, and I followed all the instructions in the manual for the smart Nesco canner. Now this is a 9.5 quart digital smart canner, and it is model number N as Nancy, P as Paul, C as Cat -9. And this is called the Nesco Smart Canner. And this is electric. This is not stovetop. And it does not do large batches. It does 5 wide mouth pints or 5 pints in 4 quarts. So it is not a large canner. So if you have a small family, if you have a hard time using the range top pressure canner because of the lifting this is very nice. It holds 8 cups of water, and by the time it's complete, there's only about this much water, and your inner liner lifts right up out. And this comes with your canning rack. This is a steaming rack. Your steaming rack is different. Oops. There's your steaming rack, and I dropped my other gauge. It comes with a separate gauge, and this one is green. And the green gauge would be for an elevation of over 1,000 feet. I'm in an elevation of under 1,000 feet. So it comes with the green one, and the one I have on mine that I used yesterday is the black pressure gauge. And what's nice about this canner is you can just put everything in it, and it does most of the work for you. So once you get everything in there and get it set, it saves so much time. And if you have things to do, you can go ahead and get things done. And it's, like I said, myself and my husband, we're a small family. So I'm not making a lot. I'm not preserving a lot of meat or vegetables at a time. And that way I can continually rotate my pantry. The second rack that it comes with would be this one. Now, this is your canning rack. So make sure you follow your directions. This does both steaming and canning. So for yesterday for canning, I used the canning rack. And I followed all of the instructions. Using the manual for the Nesco Smart pressure canner, the electric canner. And I did 5 pints, not 4 quarts. I like this because it's convenient. I can just get everything in there, and it beeps and lets me know when it's to the next step. When you first put everything in, you put your 8 cups of water in. You put, sorry, my puppies are going through. You put your rack in. You put your pints or quarts in. You close your lid and lock. You make sure that your pressure valve is open to exhaust or vent, whichever it may say. Then you would just push your high pressure button, and then there's a dial that'll start spinning here, digital dial, and then it'll say E10. Oh no, sorry. You have to hit pressure, then high pressure, then you set your time. And I set my time for 75 minutes because for pints you need 75 minutes, quarts you would need 90 minutes. So I set my time and then hit start. And when I hit start, it just started digitally spinning here, and then it showed up an E as Edward and 10, number 10. The E is a code for elevation, and 10 is 10 minutes. Whenever you're pressure canning, whether it's with an electric pressure canner or a stovetop pressure canner, your canner has to get up to a temperature where it'll start venting the steam. And once it starts a steady stream of steam, it has to complete that for at least 10 minutes. So if you're doing on a stovetop and it gets to the steady stream of steam, you'll set your timer for 10 minutes. This automatically comes to E10. So it's telling you that it's going to be putting off pressure, high pressure for 10 minutes. Now, once this completes that, it'll beep. And when it beeps, then I would come over and turn it from exhaust to airtight. And that's all I have to do. And then it'll spin again, because it'll start, this starts with your E10 and it'll count down to E0. And whenever it hits E0 and beeps, I'll come in and put it on to talk to your pets. it'll say E10 down to E0 and then beep. And when it beeps, I'll come in and turn it from exhaust to airtight. It'll spin again, and once the pressure gets up to where it needs to be, then it will automatically come on to the 75 minutes that I put in at the beginning, and it'll do a countdown on the down to 0. And then when it hits 0, I'll hear 3 loud beeps, and it'll say end. So when that happens, the canning process is complete in the electric canner. So I'll unplug the canner and I'll let it depressurize for at least 60 to 90 minutes. And then when I come in, I'll turn my lid and I'll make sure that I'm not right in front of it because I don't want any steam. So I'll open my lid. Of course, I'll be away where the steam isn't. I'm going to let that set for about 5 minutes. And then I'll come in and get my jar lifter. Hello, Tammy. Hope you're having an amazing day. Best wishes to your hubby. Oh, well, thank you. I'll come in and get my lifter, which I showed these yesterday. Now, this is a very small canner. And when you put 5 pints in there, especially the wide mouth, you're not really able to get your jar lifter. And remember, this is your handles. This is your lifter. And whenever you go to lift your jar out with your lifter, this is so small that with the wide mouth, you cannot get your lifter down in to take out your first jar. So what I'll do is I'll take a rag or a small towel and I'll remove my first jar. I'll pick it up and then have the towel underneath as well. And I'll move it over to my drying rack. Then you can get the rest of your jars out. Now, if you're using regular mouth pints, you don't have that problem. But with the wide mouth pints, I did notice you do have that problem. So what are we up to today? Today we are discussing part 2 of my canning yesterday using the electric canner. And I was canning pork. So today, I'm showing the pork because it was a really long live. So it takes about 20 to 30 minutes when you push your power button and your start button after you put your time in for it to get up to that pressure. And then the 10 minutes that it takes to let your steam out. And then it'll come to the 75 minutes and then count down to 0 and end. So it's quite a long process. However, like with me, I've been injured and now I'm on disability. So standing on my leg for long periods of time is an hour and a half is pushing it. So I try to, even when I'm doing my live streams, I try to keep them around an hour to an hour and a half. But this makes it easy for me. I can just set it on a counter and just make sure because this does steam. So if I do have it over here on my counter like I had yesterday in my live stream, I showed how I turned the canner so that my vent valve would not be putting my steam right up underneath of my cabinets. So it does steam. So wherever you set it up, make sure that your vent valve is not underneath of one of your cabinets or, or something like that. Now, this does not get really hot. Like if I'm canning on my toast stovetop range and I'm using my Presto canner, it does tend to get warm because you've got the gas on and you've got the steam going, and then the pressure canner itself gets really warm. This will maintain its own heat. So it's even cooler if you're canning, even in the summer or whenever you're canning. So this does maintain its heat. It does have the steam. So you will have the steam. So taking off from where I left off yesterday, this is the complete product when it's done. This is the pork. And you can see how pretty that turned out. And it does have a lot of fat cap. Now, if I would have used a leaner pork, it wouldn't have as much fat in it. But I like to go ahead and can the pork butt roast or pork shoulder butt because it's more moist. Your pork loin does tend to be more dry. So now what I'm going to do is show you 2 meals, quick meals. If I went into my pantry and I wanted a quick meal, what can I do? I've made my product. It's complete. It's sealed. I followed all my guidelines. I've cleaned my jars, washed them, rinsed them, dried them. I have labeled them and dated them, and now I have them in the pantry. So how do I use this? You know, I went through the process of canning it. So what is a couple ideas that I can give you today? How to use your own canned meat. So I left 2 jars here that I'm going to go ahead and open. Now it does have a lot of the fat, as you can see, and this is called a fat cap. Now, when you get ready to prepare your meals, this looks like a lot of fat, but really, whenever you have no liquid in your jar, which you'll see from my video yesterday, it was just raw meat, which is called raw packing. And as it cooks down, even though I had it up to the 1-inch headspace, which is your bottom line here, it cooks down. And then that fat and all that juices comes up. And you can see I have juice in the bottom, and then a fat cap, and then some meat that's exposed in the top. Now, if this jar is sealed properly, which these were, is this meat on top, even though it's not in fluid, is it still good? It absolutely is, because your jar has went through the proper canning process. And when you open this and add it to a pot or pan or slow cooker, however you're going to use it, it'll automatically turn the same color as your meat below. And as it's cooking in the pressure canner, all those juices will come up and they'll push more to the outside. It's not as much on the top, it's more to the outside. So even though it looks like a lot of fat, it's not really a lot of fat. So if you don't want all that fat before you prepare your meal, you can always scoop out your fat cap. So I'll show you that. And then I'll show you the 2 meals. And these are quick meals. If I wanted to go in and grab something and make a quick dinner, I'm going to use these 2 and I'm going to turn them into pulled pork barbecued sandwiches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently, because you don't really want to use metal in your jars. You don't want to scratch your jars, but you can gently just go in and scoop that fat if you don't want that fat, and take that fat off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that today. Now, if I was making a stew, which is the second meal I have prepared, and I've got one prepared over here in my crock pot to save a little bit of time, because these are live streams. So I'm not going to be able to get all this out, but I will be able to get some of it out. And you can see how easy that is. And I'm just going to put that right into my pot. And when I put it into the pot, I may have to turn this light off so you can see. There. When you put it into the pot, you can also take your spoon and remove some of the extra fat if you don't want any of that extra fat in there. So you can just take your time and scoop it. And it will cook down if you're going to have this on cooking. So you can easily remove your fat cap. I'm going to put my second jar, do the same thing. It has a fat cap. And see how easy that is to move. No kidding. I've got a kitty getting curious over there. And you can just go right around your edge. And just go in and spoon some of that fat right up out of there if you don't want that fat. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my second jar. And I'm going to go ahead and get some of that extra fat out of there. Of course, I'm not going to take it all out because I'm going to be cooking this for just a few minutes. So, when you're canning your own meats and vegetables, once they're in your pantry, once they've been canned using the proper canning process, what do you do with them? How do you use them? So this is just a short, quick video preparing 2 meals using the canned pork that I canned yesterday. And you're going to see how easy and how quick this is. It just falls apart. It just literally falls apart. Now, can you drain this? You absolutely can. I'm going to cook this just for a few minutes and let it warm all the way through. And I'm going to be turning this into pulled pork sandwiches. And you can see how that just fell apart. So, if I'm wanting to make pulled pork sandwiches, instead of going through the whole process of doing my roast and then shredding, in a crock pot for hours and then shredding it, this has already been through the cooking process. You're amazing, Tammy, for what you're sharing, your wisdom with us rookies. Oh, well, thank you. So this has already been cooked. It was pressure canned for 75 minutes. So all I'm doing is warming it back up to make a quick meal. So if I'm in a hurry and I want a quick meal, I can go in and get 1 or 2 jars, depending on your size that you've canned. This is a little bit much for my husband and myself, but what I'm going to do is a batch cook. So I'll go ahead and turn this into pulled pork sandwiches. And then I'll have enough for 1 meal for myself and my husband. And then I'll put the other part in a freezer container and store it in my freezer. And then if I'm in a hurry and I want a quick meal, I have already canned it, preserved it. I went ahead today and made an extra pulled pork barbecued sandwich. And then I can just take that out and let it thaw, heat it up, and I've got my pulled pork sandwiches. So that's one meal I'm going to be making. Now the second meal, I'll try and move over slow here. If I wanted to make a quick stew, which is what I've done here today, and I'm going to show you my stew, I would open up 1 pint or a quart, however big that you want to make your meal. And I'm making a stew. Hopefully you can see that okay. And all I did was just open a can. This is some of the canned pork that I had in the pantry. I just opened it and put it all in there. Then I added 1 can of potatoes, drained and cubed, and then 1 can of carrots, drained, and I had some frozen onions. I added a little bit of garlic and a little bit of pepper and salt, and you can see what an absolutely beautiful stew that made. And I just put it in my crock pot, let it warm all the way through. And you can see how that meat just absolutely falls apart. So there is another meal that I've made, quick and easy. And yes, we'll do a taste test. I don't add any salt when I'm canning. The guidelines say you can add salt if you would like to. However, I didn't because whenever I'm cooking, I brought this, the pint of pork, put it in my crock pot. Well, actually, I think I used 2 pints yesterday. And 1 can of whole canned potatoes drained and 1 can of carrots. Hi, good morning. And then whenever I was cooking it in my crock pot, I added salt, pepper, some a handful of frozen onions that I had diced up in my freezer, and a little bit of garlic powder. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. So here is the stew, and it looks absolutely delicious. And the meat is so tender, it just literally falls apart. It just absolutely shreds. Amazing. Very, very tender. It's got just enough flavor because I flavored it the way I want it. Tell us about yourself. What was your what was you specializing in for a living? I'm a grandmother and a great-grandmother now. I did go to college. I do have a BA in healthcare administration. However, I've worked multiple jobs over the years. My last job I was working in construction because my husband is a carpenter. And I was working as a carpenter helper. And unfortunately, I got injured. And I'm now on disability. It was a very bad injury. And, yeah, so I've done just about everything from waitressing to dishwashing to cooking to certified nursing assistant, first responder, and then went to college and got a BA in healthcare administration. So, and then worked in construction. So I've done many, many jobs throughout my life, and I am 62. And that's one reason I was doing this live stream on using the electric canner. My husband just got me that for my birthday in December. So yesterday I was showing my first time I used it. I did chicken breast, and I showed that on my live yesterday, the pints of chicken breast. And then the second trial, I put beef roast through. And then yesterday was my third try, and I put pork through. And this is the first of the month. And normally the first of the month, I'll do my pantry stock up. So as I'm doing my pantry stock up, I went ahead and looked to see what all canned meats I had. And I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and do some pork. I'll just bring you all along. Because this is me at my age. You're never too young or too old to learn how to do things and try new things. So my husband just got me the electric canner in December. And this is my third time using it. And as you can see, I'm very, very happy with it. It does an amazing job. Yesterday's live was very, very detailed as I went through the process of cutting the meat, putting it in the jars, the preparation of the jars, how everything is sanitized, and the whole canning procedure. So as this is cooking down, and it will cook down, if I would have drained this, it probably would have cooked a lot quicker. And since I have my light on, I'll just bring this over. And you can see, hopefully, how nice that is. And it is just shredding. It's just falling apart. Now, if it has too much grease on it, you can go ahead and drain it. Let it warm up like this and drain some more of that grease off of it. But I just let this warm up and cook through. So if my power was out and I had a wood stove or a camp stove or, you know, some other way to use my stovetop gas, all I'd have to do is go in and get a can of my meat and open it, warm it up, and I would have, like today, no, kitty. Let me get my kitty down. I'm afraid he's going to come over. I don't want him to come over there. No, baby. No. Thank you. He smells Mama cooking in the kitchen, and he wants to see what's going on. I apologize for that. So anyway, this is a quick, easy meal if your power's out. It's a quick, easy meal if you just don't feel like making a great big meal. You can just go into your pantry. You know that you canned the meat. You know that you followed the proper guidelines, the USDA guidelines. You followed the proper manual instructions on your pressure canner. And meat, all meat has to be pressure canned. And the reason for that is it needs that pressure and that heat for that length of time so it can get clear through all of the meat in the jar and get it to the proper temperature to where it is shelf stable. So any of your meats, your chicken, your beef, your pork, if you raw pack it, you're just washing and cleaning your jars, preparing them, and you're raw packing, cutting your meat into 1-inch squares and filling your jar up to the 1-inch headspace. You do not add any liquid. Then you put your lids on, your rings on, and put it in your canner and process it. However, if you're doing hamburger or ground sausage, those have to be heated. You do not put those in your jars raw. You brown them in a skillet, and then you have warm jars because anything you're working with, if you're putting cold meat, and you need a cold jar and you need the cold canner. That way you don't do a thermal shock and it won't break your jars and you won't have an accident. So with raw packing, it's cold jars, cold meat, and cold water. Now, if you're doing hamburger or sausage, you've browned your meat, so you want warm jars and you want warm water. And then you would just put your hamburger and sausage in the jar, and with hamburger or sausage, you add liquid water or a beef broth or chicken broth, whatever you want to add. Thermal shock, been there, done that. Yes, not nice. We all have those little boo-boos, so yeah. But with your hamburger and pork, you add your liquid up to your 1-inch. And then you make sure every time you fill your jars, before you put your lids and rings on, use white vinegar on a towel or a paper towel, and just wipe your rims, make sure they're good and clean, even if you use a funnel. Put your lids on, rings on, and then can it. Now, that raw packing is not adding any liquid, and it is not browning your meat. You're just putting raw meat into the jar up to your 1-inch headspace. Hot packing would be browning your beef, browning your sausage, putting it in a warm jar, and then adding a warm liquid, and then cleaning your rims, putting your lids on and rings on, and then placing it in your pressure canner that has warm water. So this is almost completely cooked away, that juice. I'll bring you closer and turn that light off so you can see. And I'm going to be turning this really quick into some barbecued pulled pork sandwiches. But that has shredded so nice on its own. Almost all of that juice is completely out of there. So I'm going to turn it down to low. And I'm going to add my barbecue sauce. So this is a couple ideas that you can use on how to use the product once you've canned it, preserved it. I have very, very little liquid in there. My meat's already basically shredded. So now I'm just going to add my barbecue sauce. And I'm just using some Baby Ray's. And I'm going to stir that in there. And this is absolutely delicious. It would be the same process if you took a loin or a pork roast and put it in your oven or your crock pot and cooked it until it was able to be shredded. And then you turned it into pulled pork barbecued sandwiches. So this is just two very quick and easy ways that I use my canned pork. And this way you're adding your own ingredients. It doesn't have any salt in it. You can put salt in your jars when you can them. And it recommends if you do add salt, it's a half a teaspoon for a pint, a teaspoon for a quart. Now you can see how absolutely delicious that looks. You can see how nice that's shredded. And that fast, you've got pulled pork barbecued sandwiches for dinner. So if your power's out, very quick, very easy. If you don't have any electric. Do you use cannabis? I've seen a lady your age making butter and oils and infusing her. No, I don't. No, I do make my own butter. I have a very small family. Sorry, it's just my husband and myself. So I have a very small butter churn. And pull this out. It's only about the size of a quart jar or a little smaller. And it's very handy. I think it takes 300 cc's of whipped cream. You put it in your jar. It comes with a little rubber mat to set your jar on. And you just spin it, and in 15 minutes you have butter, homemade butter. It's only ingredients, your whipped cream, and 15 minutes of spinning, and you've got homemade butter. And the kit that I came with this little, what's called a butter crock. It says butter. You may not be able to see that. It came with the butter crock or butter bell. And the reason they call it a butter bell is because it looks like a little bell. And whenever you put your whipped cream in, the 300 cc's, and you take your 15 minutes and spin, you've got butter. And you remove the butter, and then you have milk in the bottom, which is like a buttermilk. So you can save that to make biscuits or pancakes. And you just take the butter out, put it in cold water with a few ice cubes, and rinse it a few times until you don't have any more milk. And then it came with 2 little paddles that I squeezed the liquid out of. And then when I'm done doing that, I'll take a spoon and spoon my fresh made butter into this bell. And each spoon I put in, I'm pressing it to the sides to pack it. And it will feel exactly this butter ball, butter bell, or butter crock. And once I have this completely full, it's just enough. That's what my butter churn made. Is just enough to fill this one time. So I know I can have soft butter. I can set it on my island, on my counter. It doesn't have to be stored in the refrigerator. This is the crock, and there's a small line at the bottom, which is about 1/3 cup, I believe, of cold water you put in the bottom. And then you just, with your butter, and you just set that in. And you check your water about every 3 to 4 days. And anytime you want fresh butter, you have fresh butter. So it's absolutely amazing. And that way you know there's no preservatives, no additives. Now I will use just a little pinch of salt, because my husband likes butter with salt. So I will add just a little pinch of salt and my heavy cream. And that's it. And instantly, in 15 minutes, I have homemade butter. And it's soft butter, spreadable butter, delicious butter. So that is 2 little meals that I could make using this product that we made yesterday. The pulled the pork butt, and I think this was an 8.5 pound pork butt, and it made the 5 pints. And then I have leftover, which I'm going to go ahead and put in my freezer and put it away for another stew that I'm planning on making. So it would have probably made at least another 4 to 5 pints. But I have another whole pork butt in my freezer, and I like to rotate my freezer monthly. That's why I do everything at the first of the month. I can go in and rotate my freezer. In my last few videos, lots I've been showing how I've been doing my videos, or my pantry restock, and then my freezer rotation. So one of the first ones that I did, I made my fettuccine noodles, homemade noodles. And then I used the pasta and beyond, and I explained all of that on the live stream. Pantry restock and freezer restock and baking and cooking. So these are the 1 gallon. I made 4 pounds, so I had 2-gallon jars of the fettuccine. I love to cook anything. Most of my meals are probably more old-fashioned, but I do make a lot of the Italian meals. I love lasagna. I make my own meatballs and make spaghetti and meatballs. I love stuffed shells, so I love a lot of Italian. And I make my own pizzas. So I do a lot of the Italian. I do a lot of the home cooking. I was raised in a very large family, and my mother did a lot of preserving. She canned and preserved her meats, her vegetables, her fruits, and made jellies and jams. So I was raised using most everything we had. My mother grew and my father grew. We had a garden. They would go out and hunt deer in deer season, and we would have canned venison and frozen venison. They would freeze it for steaks or roast. So I was kind of raised old-fashioned, but I still do make modern-day meals. So anyway, this is some of my continued on pantry and freezer rotation. So when I'm looking at my pantry, I knew I had just made my chicken. I made 5 pints of the chicken breast, canned those. I canned 5 pints of beef roast, and I showed both of those on my live stream yesterday. So I went ahead and canned 5 pints of the pork roast. And I was trying out my new electric canner that my beautiful, wonderful husband, my amazing husband, bought me for my birthday in December. So that was my 3rd time using the electric canner, the Nesco Smart Canner. I'd love to take a recipe of your pizza. Do you cook it in the oven? Yes. I have a bread maker, and what I'll do is I found a bread dough that I absolutely love, but my hands just don't work like they used to. I am 63, so I'm getting up there a little bit. So I'll mix my dough in my bread maker, my bread machine. And then when it gets to, when the dough's done but not baked, it'll tell you to remove your paddle. I'll go ahead and remove my dough and then let it set for a few minutes, and just so the I can't even say it. So you don't have the force to force your dough. Let it set for a few minutes, and when you can start stretching it and moving it on your pizza pan, I'll go ahead and get it on my pizza pan, and I'll take a fork and put a few holes in the center of the dough. And then I'll put my dough in my oven at 350 degrees for a few minutes and let it rise. And then I'll take it out and I make my own pizza sauce. And I'll put my pizza sauce and my cheese and pepperoni or whatever I want to add to that. It's a very nice dough recipe. I use it to make my homemade bread. And here's some of the homemade bread. And it turns out so nice. It's the same dough recipe that I used for the pizza dough. And here is some of the homemade bread. And you can see how nice that looks. And it's so soft. I absolutely love this recipe. And I have a... I think it's called Our Daily Bread, which is a bread slicing guide. It's wooden on the bottom, and it has plastic on the top, and you just set your loaf on, and it gives you a guide to slice your bread, so your bread comes out even slices. So this is the same dough recipe that I use for my white bread. My husband loves cinnamon raisin bread. I'll make it with the same dough. The pizza crust. And then here are the rolls. And I normally will make 18 rolls, and then I'll divide them into 2 packs. And this is my 2nd pack. And I'll freeze them in a freezer bag and just put them in the freezer. And I'll take out 8 at a time because I know my husband and I will use 8. But while I'm using the dough, I can go ahead and make 18 rolls, and they always turn out absolutely beautiful, fresh. They brown wonderful. Go ahead and turn that on. They brown absolutely wonderful, and it's the same dough recipe for my white sandwich bread, for my rolls, for my pizza dough, for cinnamon raisin bread, and I also use the same dough recipe for cinnamon rolls. So it's a very nice, easy, quick dough, and that way I know that it doesn't have any artificial ingredients in it. I made it myself. And whenever I'm rotating my freezers and my pantries, it's easy for me to just go through and see what I have. But whenever I bake my bread using that dough, once the dough machine has mixed to where it comes to the point where it says remove your paddles. And when it says remove the paddle, After that, it'll start to bake. That's when I remove my dough. And I have some cast iron bread pans, which I absolutely love, but make sure that they are well greased. I use a lot, heavy grease. And I'll just take my dough out of the machine and I'll just kind of pat just enough to stretch it a little to pat the air bubbles out. And then I will do, I'll pull I call it my head. I'll pull the top down and then fold my shoulders in and then just roll and then just pinch it and just drop it into my cast iron bread pan and let it rip. Then it'll do its last rise, because when it's in the bread machine, it'll go through its first rise and its second rise. So once I put my dough for my bread into my bread pans, my cast iron bread pans, I'll just set it on the counter. I don't even cover it. And I'll allow it to rise to where it's up just a little bit above my bread pans. And then I'll put it in the oven and bake it. And it turns out absolutely amazing. Why don't you sit down for a little bit and relax your legs? I'm going to, here in just a minute, I'm going to do a final stir on this. And then I'll bring it out, bring a little bit of it out so you can see. Now that was very fast and very easy. I didn't have to go through and shred all of that. See how nicely that's shredded? All I did was heat it up and add my barbecue sauce, and this is now ready for pulled pork barbecue sandwiches. So that's another use that I do with my pulled pork, or with my canned pork that we canned yesterday because everyone was with me. We done it together, experimenting with the new electric pressure canner. And yes, I'll do a taste test. I'll let you see how nice that looks, how nice it shreds. Delicious. So when you're making, let me take a drink. A drink of coffee. So when you're preserving and making all of your own preserves, whether it be meat, vegetables, fruits, jams, jellies, always follow the USDA guidelines. Purchase books if you can. I always try to follow any of the Ball, and I love the Ball preserving books. This is the hardback. And Ball does update their books a lot. So here's a couple more that I have just to show you offhand. This is the Ball Book Guide to Preserving, and that's the softback. Oops, sorry, my puppies are barking. I have a Kroger order coming, it may, or Walmart order coming, it may be here. And a blue book, Preserving. So Ball does update their books, and they do follow USDA guidelines. It's been tested, it's been approved, and it's safe canning and preserving. And I absolutely love this one, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the complete book for home canning and preserving. It is very informative and it's very nice. So always try to find some books. Make sure that they are USDA. Whenever you're canning or preserving, you want to make sure that you're doing this safely. Safety first. You don't want to make yourself sick. You don't want to make your family sick. So these books are available. I think I got this one through Amazon or even eBay or possibly Walmart. I've had this one since December 2020. And I always mark in my books whenever I get them. This one I purchased the same month, 12/2020. So, make sure you have some books, or go online and download the recipes that you're going to be doing. Make sure you're following proper, safe, USDA approved guidelines. And look how easy and simple that was to make 2 absolutely delicious meals. This I turned into a stew using canned pork, 1 can of potatoes cubed and drained, 1 can of carrots drained, a little bit of onions that I had diced and froze, and I think it was 2 pints of canned pork. So this is going to be dinner this evening with the rolls. And then I turned this 2 pints into this beautiful, into this beautiful pulled pork barbecue for pulled pork barbecue sandwiches. And I'll go ahead and divide that up into 2, put it in my freezer. So I'm stocking my freezer. I made the crock pot full of stew, and we'll have stew this evening, and then I'll separate the rest leftover stew into containers, and I'll put it in my freezer, and that'll be future meals, future freezer meals. So by coming on today and finishing up part 2, I've kind of given you at least 2 ideas how to use your canned pork once it has been canned and it's in your pantry. Another way that I like to use the canned pork is I'll open a can, a pint, I call it a can, open a pint, and I'll put it in my skillet and warm it through, and then I'll add my flour, and if I was making sausage gravy, but this will end up shredding up very, very nice, as you've seen with the pulled pork barbecue there. And as it warms up, it'll shred, and then I'll turn it into a gravy, almost like a sausage gravy, but it's with the pork. And I'll have mashed potatoes and just pour that over my mashed potatoes, and that is absolutely delicious. You can make with your see, what else do I do with the pork? I think I've made what would you call them? Burritos with pulled pork, or with the canned pork. With the beef, you can do the same thing. You can make a stew. You can turn it into fajitas, burritos. There's multiple uses that you could do with the beef. The same with the chicken. And with the beef, you can make a beef pot pie. Just drain your juice, liquid, out of your pint jar or quart jar. With the chicken, I made chicken pot pie. I drain the juice out of the pint jar and make my chicken pot pie. I've made chicken salad sandwiches. I drain the juice when I do that. Now, if I'm making homemade chicken noodle soup, which I make out of my canned chicken, I do not drain the juice. And when I'm making chicken and dumplings, I do not drain the juice. I just use the canned chicken. If I'm making cream of chicken, I do not drain the juice. So those are some of the uses that you can do, just a few ideas, by canning and preserving your own meat. And if you're like wintertime and you're in snow and you've got snowstorms and you can't make it out to the store, you know that you have canned meats on your pantry. And you can go in and get your canned meats out. So I always do my pantry rotation around the first of the month, and I'll go in and see what all do I need and what all do I need to make. And I knew I was getting low on my canned meats, chicken, pork, and beef. And my husband had gotten me the new electric canner for my birthday, so I thought this would be a great time to try it out and experiment. And I kind of brought you along for that. So anyway, I've been on here now for about an hour and 10 minutes. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. So I hope that gave you some ideas, and it makes your meal prep quick. You know what's in it. It's not full of artificial flavors and colorings and all of that. This just had pork, butt, shoulder butt, and that was it. No water, no salt, and up to the 1-inch head space. And it was pressure canned for 75 minutes. I let it set for almost 24 hours, and then I brought you along today to do part 2 so you could see that it had sealed. I washed and cleaned the jars, and then was showing the proper way to store this once it's sealed. You remove your ring. Don't forget to remove your rings. Wash your jars with warm soapy water, rinse them and dry them. Don't forget to label what's in your jar and the date. And then when you go to store it, do not put the ring back on the jar. You do not want to do that because that can give you a false seal. If it's stored with just the lid, when you go in to check your pantry, or if you're pulling your stock forward and putting your new in the back, that gives you a chance to go through and to check your seals. If you put the ring on, it can give you what looks like a false seal, or called a false seal. It looks sealed, but it's not, and it can make you sick. So please be careful and remove your rings. Just put it away with just the lid on. And if you go in like every month or every couple months and you're cleaning your pantry and you're rotating, that you can just go through and try to pick up your jar. You can pick it up by the lid. I mean, don't pick it up and be rough, but just pick it up and then pack it to make sure that you don't have that hollow sound like I showed at the beginning of this live stream. It'll be a ping and not a pong, if that makes sense. You'll have to go back to the beginning of my live stream. And you can tell whether or not your seal has been broken. So it's a healthy way to eat. You know what's in it. It's easy for you to go to your pantry and just pull out your meals. It makes it easy for meal planning for the month. And if you have a small family like myself, just me and my husband, this is very, very convenient. And the electric canner that I used, the Nesco electric smart canner, does 5 quarts or 5 pints wide mouth or regular mouth and 4 quarts. So it's not a big canner, and it is an electric canner. It's not a stovetop canner. And for a small family like myself, it is absolutely amazing. So I hope that was informative. Hopefully it will inspire you to think about learning how to preserve your own meats and vegetables and fruits and make your own jams and jellies. Enjoy your kitchen. Have fun in your kitchen. I'm always learning, even at my age. Yes, you're never too young or too old to learn. This is my birthday present. I just turned 63, and I'm learning how to use the new electric Nesco smart canner, and I absolutely love it. So anyway, I'm going to hop off of here, and that was 2 simple, easy meals. That was making the pork stew with the canned pork, and I just put it in the crock pot. And then the pulled pork barbecued sandwiches. And as you can see, it is absolutely delicious. I didn't have to shred it. That meat just completely fell apart as I warmed it up, and it was very quick. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm going to get off of here and give my foot and leg a rest. So that was part 2. Sorry it took so long, but when you are canning, especially using a pressure canner, it takes at least 75 minutes to pressure can. And it takes sometimes 20 to 30 minutes for the pressure canner to get up to the temperature to even start your steady stream of steam for 10 minutes, and then your 75 minutes. So I tried to break this up into 2, and then that way I got you through the canning process yesterday, and today was the finished product, and then how I would use, a couple ideas how I use the product. So anyway, that's all I have today. I hope you enjoyed this, and then if you enjoy videos like this, learning how to use foods that you've processed, or homemade pastas or things like that, the little things I do on my channel, please like and subscribe if this is something you like. I'm not a very big channel. I'm a very small channel, but I enjoy coming on and cooking and baking. And my daughter asked me to come on and do some live streams and to do some of my menus and some of my meals, because she lives in another state and she gets overwhelmed easy in the kitchen. And she said, this way, Mama, it's like I can just turn it on and I'm in the kitchen with you and you're with me, and I can go through the whole process, and it makes it so much better for me. So that's the main reason I started doing this. And she's really grateful. So if my daughter is watching this, sweetheart, here's another video showing you how to use the preserved meats. So anyway, until next time, bye-bye, everyone. And have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. It's beautiful. The sun's out. Look at the sun coming through on me. It's really bright. Have a beautiful Thursday. Enjoy your day. Don't be afraid to try new things. Experiment in your kitchen. Enjoy your kitchen. And as always, please be kind. Be kind to one another. We need to see more of that. We really do. So, till next time, bye-bye. I'm so glad you stopped in. And as always, I want to thank you for your patience and your kindness. You're always absolutely wonderful. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. And bye-bye. I hope this was informative, and this will inspire you to start preserving some of your own meats, vegetables, fruits, and making your own jams and jellies. Enjoy your kitchen, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye, everyone. I'll see you the next time.